Obviously, this news minister raises questions about the Canadian response. I want to start by asking you about something the U.S. ambassador said to our colleague Chris Hall. I'd like to play you a clip.
I am comfortable saying that there have been informal outreaches about the ability of Canada to potentially step up and to be a location for women seeking abortions and reproductive health services that might not be legal in their states as a result of an adverse decision by the Supreme Court, that Canada is open to those conversations and willing to have those conversations.
So what can you tell us about those conversations? What is happening? What is the discussion right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that I can talk about those discussions, but what I can say is that, we have been having conversations within our government about how we might be able to support American women, recognizing that, particularly for lower income American women, Canada might not be, the destination of choice, and that there are going to be U.S. states like California, like New York, like a number of others that are going to bring forward their own legislation to protect a woman's right to choose and access to sexual health and reproductive rights. But we are, very actively talking about what we can do in Canada to support American women on what honestly is just a devastating day for American women and for women right around the world, frankly.
You mentioned lower income women, and I'm trying to understand if you are talking about women who simply won't have the means to make it to Canada, or if you're talking about Canada providing support to those women to allow them access to travel for abortion.
Well, I think it's more about women who wouldn't have the means to necessarily get to Canada. We're already hearing stories about women in Texas, for example, who, there's a heartbeat law there that's one of the most draconian in the country already in the United States, not even being able to get to the next state because it's out of reach for them. So this is going to have a disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable women and girls in the United States, which is what is so upsetting about that. But, working with the U.S. Government, I think, is something that, is a good thing. But of course, it's, today's a hard day. I think even if we knew that the leak was out there, weeks and months ago, it doesn't make today any harder for American women who are seeing decades of their rights rolled back in an instant.
I would still like to understand what it is that Canada is discussing with the United States when it comes to American women coming to access abortion in this country.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think we're at liberty to talk about that specifically, but there are conversations about what would Canadian support look like. Right now you can access medical services in Canada out of pocket. I know that, when abortion was illegal in Canada, a lot of Canadian women crossed the border into the United States to get abortion care. And there's lots of conversations about how do we support, our sisters down in the United States. There's conversations about medical abortions or medically induced abortions. A lot of people, when they think about abortion procedures, they think about surgical abortions, whereas actually medical abortions are becoming much more common. That's something that can be done at home for people. So is there a way to send it through the mail? We also have to think very carefully about
I want to pause there because I think that is significant, Minister. Can you explain to me then, you're talking about the prospect of Canada providing those services to American women?
Well, it could be that, or it might be different American states who are doing that. Like, we have to understand what the picture is going to look like around the United States and then figure out what Canada's role can be like. But one of the things that I just want to caution is that what we see in countries where abortions are illegal is for women who access illegal abortions or even a medical abortion, they then get really scared to go, if something goes wrong, to a hospital or to seek medical care because they're worried about being criminalized. And so when you make abortions illegal, you don't stop abortions from happening, you just stop safe abortions from happening. So we also have to understand what the legal risks and criminal risks are for American women in these states, and we have to think about how we can support them without putting them in danger or at risk either.
So you are talking about Canada taking on, I mean, a safe haven I don't think is the right word, but taking on this sort of third-party role of facilitating this for women who could remain in the U.S.
It's like, what does it look like? What are the possibilities? And these conversations are happening because both, particularly internal to the government, and then also has to happen with provinces and territories as well as, medical associations. There's a lot to think about here. But I think today the thought is really just with American women who I think have just received a punch to the gut, in the sense that this is a big blow. This is a really sad day. And, it's something that I fear has reverberations around the world. I fear it has reverberations here in Canada. Even though there are, the vast majority of Canadians support a woman's right to choose, I fear this is going to embolden the anti-abortion activists and groups.
Well, listen, I want to talk about
to be even more active.
Pardon me, Minister, but we only have so much time, and I really do want to talk about a pledge that your government made, that your party made in the last election to ensure that there was equitable access to abortion across the country. You talked about regulation at the time. The Prime Minister has since said, well, maybe it would be legislation. When will we see action on this, whatever form it takes?
So, one of the things that our government has already done, and we're the first federal government to do this, is to withhold Canada Health transfers, a portion of them to provinces that don't fulfill their obligations. So New Brunswick is an example of that they won't fund surgical procedures, surgical abortions outside of hospital settings. So that's something that we have done.
But you've made this pledge to go further. You've made this pledge to go further.
That's a conversation that is ongoing with the Minister of Health right now to look at how we can do this. Again, one of the game changers is with access to medically induced abortions as opposed to a surgical procedure. And, talking about what does that look like in the Canadian context for Canadian women, it's quite safe, and it's something that is gaining, and particularly gained in terms of access to abortion throughout the pandemic when it became harder to access a surgical abortion, not specifically in Canada, but also around the world.
Staying in Canada, we know that there is not actually a constitutionally enshrined right to access to abortion in Canada. We hear the Prime Minister, though, talking a lot about abortion access as being a right. Is this government interested in taking steps to actually make that happen, to create legislation or whatever form that might take to enshrine it as a right?
There is a right because the Supreme Court decided that was like the right to choose is a woman's right to, security of person and bodily autonomy.
Legal scholars don't view it as a right to an abortion, though. Like a constitutionally enshrined.
That's the decision of the Supreme Court of Canada, and that is something that we have been following. And I think that that's something that is important, and as our federal government has been doing, is we are including that and as a right within the Canada Health Act, and as how we understand and interpret that, and holding provinces and territories to account. And so that's something that is important. It's important, I think, that we recognize that there are forces in this country that would like to overturn that are trying to test the waters, conservative leadership candidates who, are trying to push the envelope and limit a woman's right to access abortion. But as it stands, it is the right.
We should say that there is only one conservative leadership candidate, who Leslyn Lewis, who has put forward a plan talking about how she would limit access to abortion, and the other 5 candidates have all said that they are pro-choice. Listen, Minister,
82 Conservative MPs in the last Parliament voted to limit a woman's right to choose. So
you're talking about
even
the
if there's only one leadership
abortion.
So even if there's only one leadership candidate, 82 MPs of 119 is a pretty significant number.
I want to, there's a lot more. I think we could go back and forth about what the Conservatives are and aren't saying about this, but in closing, I just want to ask you what Canada's message is to American women, if they hear you directly today, some who might be wondering if they will ultimately come to Canada, for instance, to seek services here. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I think we share in your grief today. I think that this is The United States has often been and has been a leader when it comes to gender equality, when it comes to sexual health and reproductive rights. It's a country that for a long time other countries looked to and wanted to emulate and to improve upon. And today is a really hard day, and we stand first of all in solidarity with you, and then we're going to continue to explore how we can make sure that you're supported and that your sexual health and reproductive needs are supported. So those are conversations that are ongoing, but we share in your grief today.
Minister Gould, thank you for your time.
Thank you.